Hi everyone, welcome to Historically Speaking, an online YouTube history channel focused on the history of various institutions and professionals, how history intersects with education, culture, and the world around us. I'm Karen Yang, your host of Historically Speaking. Today we have Craig Newmark, who is a philanthropist who gets stuff done, most commonly known for founding the online classified ad service Craigslist. Newmark creates and funds networks that work to protect the country and to help people out. In 1995, Craig started curating a list of San Francisco arts and technology events, which he personally emailed to friends and colleagues, and people were soon calling it Craigslist. And he turned that soon into a company where he chose a business model that prioritized doing well by doing good. And now today, billions and billions of ads have been posted on Craigslist, the vast majority for free. And I'm just super excited to have Craig here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us. And is there anything else you'd like to add to your bio or something I might have missed or something like that?
I think that's just fine. My work, for the most part, needs to speak for itself.
That's a really great mindset. And I think like one thing I was personally wondering, I love, first of all, your mindset that you kind of get things done and that like, your actions and what you're doing for the community speak larger than, you know, words or just like what we put out in the public relations department, I guess. So I wanted to ask, what kind of inspired you to begin Craigslist and like, did you have like a certain mentality kind of going into that process or anything else like that?
Um, what inspired me to do Craigslist at first was the notion that people on the internet had already helped me out a lot, mostly settling into San Francisco in 93. People
Mhm.
helped me out a lot, and by the time early 95 came around, I was thinking that I should play my part. And so I started telling people about arts and technology events, but I also listened to people trying to find out what worked and what doesn't work.
Mhm. That's really cool. Like, getting that like community feedback none the like would have really definitely improved it to kind of appeal to the audience as well. So that's really cool.
Yeah, listening is important and listening is hard, and I still don't do a good enough job of it.
Mm. I feel like honestly, like even as like a high school student, I feel like in like a small way that kind of also kind of I can relate to that in school where we definitely, we have all of these Socratic seminars and we have all of these discussions and we're all like, oh, we want to get a good grade. So I gotta raise my hand and speak. But half the time is just listening to the ideas that other people have and being able to relate or connect to them and, share those ideas together, which is super cool. Yeah. Um, I guess like, Craigslist has been, I feel like, kind of on my radar, at least from when I was very young. I heard of all of these different social medias. I was like, hey, like this sounds super, super cool. So I wanted to know, did you like kind of have any expectations or did you expect Craigslist to get as popular as it did? And why do you think people were so interested in it and contributing to it as well?
I had no idea that the mailing list or website would have much effect. I figured I started something, I'd continue with it, and I just kept doing what I was doing. And that's the commitment even now. My philanthropy is, in a sense, is an extension of what Craigslist was about.
Mhm.
Its historical contribution might be that Craigslist showed people that the internet is actually useful and that it's possible to do things reasonably simply and effectively.
Mhm. That's like, I really like that mindset because I feel like at Craigslist kind of core center, it's kind of using the internet to connect different people and to bring, different people's needs and wants together and being able to be like, hey, you guys have the similar, maybe you can give me this and I can give you this in return. It's like two puzzle pieces kind of fitting together. So I think that's like a super cool way to kind of think of it as just bringing people together and connecting people as well. So super cool. Yeah. I wanted to ask, what was your favorite part of working on Craigslist and like what kind of drew you to this aspect of Craigslist?
Well, my favorite part of things is simply the sense that people were using the site to help themselves, to help each other out. And that was pretty good. that increased my commitment to following through with the website. For example, in 2000, I realized that I wasn't the guy to manage the site because my management skills are, let's say, limited. So I found someone who could probably do a better job than me, stepped away from all management,
Mhm.
became a customer service rep full time. And I did that pretty hard for about 15 years. To be clear, I wasn't managing customer service. That was someone else. I decided to be a customer service rep, and I continue to do customer service. So I've done it for roughly 40 years of my 50 years in the workforce.
Wow, I think that's super cool. And it's kind of like that definitely gives you a different mindset from, kind of being the manager and being the actual person, like interacting with, say, the customers and addressing their problems. I guess a question that comes to mind with that would be, what kind of like drew you to becoming like a customer service representative rather than being like, hey, like I want to manage everyone, or this is not the role for me, or something else like that.
Uh, there's two parts of it. I have seen a lot of people stick with management who maybe shouldn't be managers. But in customer service, the driving principle is treat people like you want to be treated and following through with that. And when you follow through with that, that means good customer service. In our case, the best you could do with a site that's mostly free.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's like a really good. I think just like from what I'm getting, you definitely have a really, really awesome core mission of just wanting to do good onto others and doing well by doing good. So I think that, like, yeah, it does seem that like customer service would be like the ideal position for you to be in as well. Then yeah, sure. Did you have anything? Sorry, I'm sorry if I interrupted or anything else like that. No?
Keep going, please.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask kind of like personally, I just like even in school, I can't imagine being like, okay, guys, like I'm gonna entrust somebody else with this idea that I may have came up with. So what kind of was your thought process of being able to kind of let not necessarily let this project go, but have someone else step in and be able to kind of be like, okay, like I trust you guys in managing something that I worked so passionately on.
I did have a twinge of regret, but I realized that I wasn't the guy to keep managing things. And I decided I needed to be like a grown up. So I turned it over and basically I had this agreed that I would have no management effect or influence, except maybe in the case of something dire.
Mhm.
But sometimes you do need to let go, and that's worked out. It gave me the time to notice when people needed philanthropic help of
Mhm.
different sorts. That help consisted of things like community building and better communications and funding.
Mhm. Yeah, that sounds really great because I feel like I know you have your Craig Newmark philanthropies, which I'll definitely get to talk about. And I wanted to ask, like, what were some lessons? You seem like you definitely have a lot of experience in lessons that you learned from like working on Craigslist and working in the customer service department that you kind of applied to the Craig Newmark philanthropies, I guess.
Well, the deal is first, most important, treat people like you want to be treated, but then do design in a way that makes things as easy to use as possible. If you design things really, really well, that means how to do something is something that people can easily figure out, and that way everyone wins. Realize, however, that no matter how hard you try to do that, it won't work in some cases. So be around in those cases. For example, a lot of my work in customer service for my philanthropies is to remind people and then ask again for them to sign the application.
Hmm.
But another little part, for example, is helping people notice that to do a submission, you got to use multiple file select normally.
Hmm.
And Oh, there's just those little things which, no matter how much we try, there's always something.
Hmm. Wow, I think like definitely it's very customer oriented, which I think is really, really awesome. And that like I love how you're like, okay, we got to make it as simple as possible so someone A knows how to do it and B also wants to do it. Because oftentimes, if we have like a list of like, oh, you have to like a 24-step process to even post something on there, that's like a huge turn off and people kind of fall through that. So I love how it's like very community and audience based and keeping that mindset in there as well. So that's super cool. Um, I guess like yeah, we can totally talk about Craig Newmark Philanthropies, which I'm super super interested in as well. I guess I wanted to just start out with the most basic question, I guess. What is Craig Newmark Philanthropies and kind of what kind of projects do you guys like to tackle and help out with?
Uh, Philanthropies, that's just my way of giving back. Um, I've done well enough to help my family out, friends out, to live reasonably comfortably. I mean, no mansions or anything like that, no yachts, no cars.
Ooh.
Um, and that's what I used to call nerd values. It's more satisfying to change things than to have lots of money to often waste.
Mm.
And so I figured would start using some of that cash to change things in ways that mattered. For example, when we're looking at the news or just hanging out on social media sites, we need information that we could trust. We don't
Mhm.
want to be lied to. And
Mhm.
so a lot of my efforts are devoted to trustworthy journalism and things like countering information warfare, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
There's other areas. For example, I do a lot of support for veterans and their families, since I figured they were willing to defend us and to defend me. I should take that personally, and that's the results. Now, I love birds, but I also have a sense of humor. That explains why I support pigeon rescue efforts.
Oh my gosh. My sister's actually a huge bird nerd, so I'm sure she'll like really be happy to hear about that for sure. But yeah.
Yeah, I do see some evidence of that behind you.
Yeah, it's yeah, there's a lot going on. There's like yeah, birds and stuff like that. But yeah, she's like a huge bird nerd and I think like I love, how vast and how like diverse the philanthropy like support is with different organizations. And I remember looking and being and seeing like your previous interviews about like supporting media and supporting that kind of investigative journalism and supporting journalism. But I also love how you talked about, supporting like pigeon rescue missions and of course supporting our veterans as well, which is all super, super important. Um, I don't want to make you pick favorites because, I've kind of noticed that's not something a lot of people want to do, especially if they're working on such cool and such diverse projects. But I guess I'll ask, and if you feel like you have a few, feel free to talk about that. But what has been kind of your favorite effort with the Craig Newmark philanthropies, and why did you enjoy working on such projects so much?
It's hard to say. The pigeon rescue is the most entertaining because, well, I've even done photo ops with rescue pigeons, and I'm probably overdue for another. That's probably something my wife would prefer not to for me to be saying. Um, Otherwise, it is pretty satisfying working with veterans and getting feedback from them in terms of how much I've been able to help other people help them.
Hmm.
That's pretty good. They also reaffirm the role I should play in defending the country. Because frankly, I came of age during the Vietnam War and wonder if I should have volunteered or something. And they told me I would not have done well in that war. I wouldn't have lasted more than a day. But information warfare, countering disinformation, that kind of thing,
Hmm.
helping with cybersecurity, they tell me that's my war. So here I am, nearly 70, in active service.
I think that is super cool. And when you mentioned that, that something else kind of came to mind in that just as citizens, like regardless of our age and regardless of our time period, we kind of have a duty through, the information we consume or the information we put out, to kind of be very conscious of that and be conscious of the impact and the consequences that that may have on other people. So I love how you mentioned that, you're still kind of an active person in just like countering misinformation. And I feel like, we can also all kind of think of ourselves in a way as those kind of agents of just making sure that we're not spreading misinformation at the bare minimum and actively just like dismantling those kind of thought processes as well. So that's super cool.
Thanks.
Yeah. I wanted to ask actually about this kind of investigative journalism work, or not investigative journalism, just kind of this counter cyber warfare. Sorry if I'm like getting a couple of terms wrong. That your work that you're kind of doing. It's that like I know it kind of relates back to Craigslist, and I was wondering if Craigslist started kind of in the beginnings of the internet, I guess, in a way, when the internet was kind of just getting started. And I wanted to ask, like, do you have like an interest or like a background in this kind of like computer security and this kind of like coding kind of business, I guess?
Well, my training is that of a software engineer,
Mhm.
and I've written a lot of code in my time and wrote the first and second versions of the site, at least as I count them. I've been doing computer security related work very intermittently since my time in college, dating from around 1974 or so. Now I'm heavily involved in cybersecurity, but it seems that my real role is not on the technology, but on getting people educated on a civilian level. That is, everyone should know how to protect their systems, whether at home or on the road. And I should provide for career level training, and it should be for everyone, regardless of who you are. If you have the skills, the training should be made available. And a great upside of that is that the estimate is that there's well over 400,000 cybersecurity careers just in the US waiting for people to be trained.
Mhm.
Now, I have enough technology knowledge to understand in some depth when I'm talking with people about cybersecurity measures. That matters because I speak to a lot of people in industry. I talk to people in government about cybersecurity, particularly CISA, which is part of Homeland Security, but I also speak to the folks in the White House about it, FBI, and other areas. The idea is that they need civilians talking more and more about cybersecurity awareness and education.
Mhm.
And one of the people I work with, Camille Stewart, and I forget her new married name, but she she just moved to the office, I think, of the National Cyber Director, and just published a nationwide notice for this kind of thing a couple
Mhm.
of days ago.
Oh, wow. Super relevant. Oh my God.
I better look up her last name right away.
Yeah, no worries. I'll like make sure to do that and see what I can do to like link it to that. But wow, like that's super cool. I kind of like even I walked into this interview kind of, I was like, oh, this is so cool. He basically created Craigslist and has this really great community oriented philosophy, which I really, really love. And like I love how that's also kind of carried over in your service with cybersecurity and with your kind of means of education, and your efforts to educate others with that as well, which I think is super, super cool. So I wanted to, yeah, sure, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just saying thank you.
Yeah. And I think that I wanted to ask one final question, just kind of I think it's just super, super cool, number one, that you kind of have this career that has kind of dabbled in like creating a very public social media kind of reminiscent kind of thing, while also, later on dabbling in a lot of like community service and like country oriented kind of ideas as well, which I think is super, super cool. How do you feel like these two things have kind of influenced you, or how do you feel like you've taken some of the lessons from Craigslist into the work that you may be doing now and educating others about cybersecurity and talking to people in like the White House? Just super, super cool.
Um, the fundamental lessons are actually lessons I learned literally in Sunday school, like treating people like I want to be treated.
Hmm.
Other big lessons are no one enough is enough, which
Hmm.
is one reason I figured no need to make enough money to buy those yachts, houses, or cars, not mansions, that is. And those are the fundamental lessons which I'm still bringing forward. I learned those things like 60 years ago, and I internalized them, and I only started realizing what I had done in the last 10 years when people started asking pointed questions. So what you're doing is continuing a tradition within professional journalism of asking and then asking more questions.
Yeah.
And there, the I just follow through with what I learned way back then. Now I do it consciously. I used to do it without thinking much about it.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that is super cool. And I think that something I personally am going to take away from this conversation is to definitely keep that more in my mind and keep that more conscious in terms of, everything I do for the community or any other aspects I want to do it, treat others as I want to be treated as well. So I think that is a super great, message that you're putting out there for sure.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah. As we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to add or any, I guess, like your projects are super, super cool. Like if there is any links or anything you want to do a special shout out for, I guess now is the time to do that, I guess, or anything else you
Nah, I'll just remind everyone that it's mostly a nerd's got to do what a nerd's got to do.
That's a great mindset and one very applicable for students and teachers and everyone else in the world as well. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much as well. And to everyone watching at home, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.